Hey, everybody, welcome to our weekly missions roundtable. This, I believe, is our 8th episode, and we're joined today by some really cool missionaries. We'll introduce them in a second, but let me tell you who I am. I'm Mike Pettengell. I'm the director of Mission to the World's West Coast office, and somewhere on one of these screens is Anthony English. Anthony, introduce yourself.
They call me the Ron Weasley, Scottie Pippen, Han Solo of the West Coast of. I am a great number 2 to the other bald-headed man here on this weekly missions roundtable. So hello, everybody.
No, nobody calls him that. So, and then we have Ali Hasrati. Ali, introduce yourself.
Hi, welcome back. I'm the only staff member with a full head of hair on the West Coast.
She's got enough for all three of us. So.
All three of them.
And then we're joined by the Henrys, and the Henrys are some really neat missionaries that are working with the Navajo Nation, and they have been on the field for a while, and they are joining Mission to the World to be a part of the PCA's Sending Arm. Henry, say hi, and please introduce your guest.
Hi. So this is our youngest daughter. Her name is Felicity.
Hey, Felicity.
Yeah, we call her Dee Dee for short.
Hey, DB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So sweet. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We would love to hear about your call and how you guys, first felt your call to the Navajo Nation and just to missions in general.
Yeah, I could start a little bit. My call starts all the way back in high school. I graduated from Columbine High School the year before the shooting happened. And I was in college at Covenant College in '99 when the shooting happened. And people kept on asking me, did I know the shooters? Did I know Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold? And it just struck me as very sad that I hadn't really gone outside my comfort zone. I think I had security and comfort as kind of a overemphasized priority in my life. And I think God used that to challenge me, to make me feel a little bit more thoughtful about where am I putting my priorities in my life? Am I willing to go and talk to people that are not like myself, that wear trench coats, that doesn't necessarily feel safe? And am I willing to do that before they have a time limit? Even if I don't have a time limit as a Christian, I might feel like I'm going to live for eternity. But there's people in my life that I encounter daily that if I don't reach out to them, they might not have the same kind of eternal perspective as I do. And I only have this life to actually make use of that. So I think that's what God used Columbine shooting, the school massacre, to really start my mind working. But my call to the Navajo Nation is even a longer story, but ultimately it came down to my Covenant Seminary. They required an internship, and I spent it up in Washington with the Yakima. And then the following summer, I went to the Cree Reserve up in Hobbema, Canada. So those were really life-changing events for me. Emily also has some stories about her exposure to the Native tribes too.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family that we hosted missionaries in our home often. And I, as a child, was always really impressed by the missionaries and the stories that they told and their bilingual children. And I was really was just enamored by the lives that they led. And so the Lord used that early on in my life to call me into the ministry. And then I have a background with college students. I used to do collegiate ministry with the Navigators and did that down in Tempe, Arizona, at Arizona State for 4 years. And we would bring large groups of college students on weekend service project trips. And it was right around the same time that DH was getting introduced to the Cree tribe and the tribes in Washington State that I got introduced to the Navajo tribe in Chinle, Arizona. And I was the staff person that weekend that was kind of in charge of the round the clock prayer, while we had a bunch of students doing all different kinds of mercy ministry type stuff in that community. And the local missionaries gave me this list of things to pray for the Navajo people about. And you just don't pray for a people group for 24 hours without your heart falling in love with them, right? So the Lord used that in my life to give me a heart for Native America. So when DH and I met and he was sharing with me about his calling to work with a tribe, an indigenous tribe, I was like, sign me up, like I'll go anywhere, you know? So we originally were going to go back up to Canada where he had spent one of his summers interning, but the Lord brought us down to the Southwest, and we've been working with the Navajo tribe for almost the last 5 years.
Very
That's
cool.
awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Man, and DH, it's crazy that you went to Columbine. I do on Tuesday, I do something called Persecution Tuesdays using this book right here. And yeah, Extreme Devotion. And we talked about Rachel Scott.
Yeah.
So, very crazy, man. But yeah, that's just surreal. But you guys are working with the Navajo Nation, Navajo tribe right now. What kind of ministry or ministries are you guys currently involved in, with the Navajo people?
Yeah, we do a lot of outreach and building relationships with younger Navajo guys and Navajo girls. For Emily, we have gotten to know a handful of 20-some-year-old Navajos that we've really fallen in love with. We've been able to walk with them through some serious hard times. One in particular has gone through a valley of darkness that we stepped in, and we actually invited him to just be really close friends with us. And actually,
he lived with us for about a year, one of
Yeah.
these young men, and just became part of our family. Our kids still, sometimes, I mean, he hasn't lived with us for I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months now, but sometimes our kids are still like, where is he? You know, thinking that he should be, you know, in his room or in the house with us. Hospitality is a big thing that we do. It comes naturally for both of us, but we also really value that because the amount of trauma that Native Americans have been through, one of the most humanizing things we feel you can do for someone who's experienced trauma or some sort of dehumanization is to have them into your home and sit around a table with them and share a meal and let them be, you know, a part of your family. And we don't have a perfect family by any means, but we love the opportunity of just letting people see the real deal, you know, like the reality of like a Christian family, where we're striving to embody the gospel in our home. That's one of our favorite things that we get to do. I've done some counseling and discipleship and Bible studies with young ladies.
We've also done premarital counseling with a few couples as well. And right now we're in the ministry of support raising. So that's also an aspect of what we do, not only for MTW to develop a stronger support base, but in general, just keeping up with the people that are in the U.S. that are unaware of what Native America is doing. So that the fact that we're getting people involved and praying with us, it's actually a big part of what we do as ministers, making people aware of Native America, what their needs are, how can we be praying for them as a church in the U.S.
Awesome. So here's something that I hear a lot when I work with missionaries that are working with First Nations or Indigenous tribes. So come on, Henrys. I mean, they're Americans. You're right. The gospel's been taken to them. I mean, what are you doing there? What are you doing reaching people? Why don't you guys be real missionaries and go overseas?
Come to the Navajo Nation. Come on over. You don't need your passport. You're not going to need a huge airfare to get to some other country. Come on over, and we'd love to show you how different the culture is, show you how beautiful the people are, and so you can see firsthand some of the challenges that they face.
They're a post-reach people. Some people have called it a misreach or post-reach. They do have more people coming into the Navajo Nation than almost any other people group. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting the gospel. They may not actually be people that are like on the ground permanently, that are really focused on building up the church. A lot of times it can be miscommunicated or misappropriated. And sometimes, like Brian Fickert wrote, sometimes people try and help, but it actually hurts. So those are all parts of the deal. One of the biggest things I think about is when Jesus said to his disciples, go to Jerusalem and Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. If you take it literally, this United States of America is the ends of the earth. We are in it. And some of these people haven't heard the gospel before. So it really is some of the most exciting missionary work that there is in the world today.
One of the things we've also learned over the last few years is the pattern of how the church has grown on the Navajo Nation. And it has gone something like this. 100 years ago, missionaries came to the Navajo tribe to start a church. They would plant a church, they would disciple, their people. After 5 or 10 years or so, then they would leave, either to go on furlough, or they had, would have to move home for some reason or another. And they would hand the church off to their favorite Navajo, or someone that they had poured a lot of their life and energy and discipleship into. And then that individual would then become the pastor of the church. Well, churches on the Navajo Nation are very clan oriented, so very family oriented. So if there's a family conflict or a family drama, then there's going to be a division in the church. And Aunt so-and-so is going to leave because she didn't like what her cousin brother did at church. And so then a well-meaning church from California comes to the Navajo Nation on a missions trip, and they say, oh, there's this group that needs a new church building. We can build you a building. And then pop, here comes a new church with an even, less trained and less equipped individual to lead that church, so on and so forth. So one of the things that we have really developed a heart for and a concern for is the health of the church across the reservation. There's over 500 churches on the Navajo Nation right now. So initially we thought, we don't need to plant a church, we don't need to start a church, there's so many, but we've come to realize that the churches are pretty unhealthy, and that the pastors of the churches, though called to serve their people, may not be equipped to do so. And that's what we really want to be able to do is find young Navajo leaders that feel called to reach their own people, so that we can train and equip them through some really robust theological material, so that they can be equipped really well to bring the gospel to their own people and plant churches among their own tribe. That's
awesome.
what we're excited to do.
Very cool. Let's we're about out of time, but I can't stop until I ask you guys this question. If there's what is is there racial tension between the history of Anglos and First Nation folks, and does that come up? Do you guys address that at all?
Yeah, there has been tension because of historical trauma. And because of just the experience that white people have when they see hitchhikers on the road that are just, they're wanting to get into town so they can get alcohol. And so there's a lot of racial profiling that happens both ways. Just to give you a picture of it, the Navajo word for a white person is bilagana, which means, historically, it means the enemy. And it's just been like the way that they address white people, and a lot of white people are okay with that. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation about what that might mean. But anyway, there's, in the name itself, there's a little tension. And depending on who you meet on the Navajo Nation, there might be some bitterness that's still there because of the historical trauma of white men coming and pulling the Navajos off their tribe during what they call the long walk. So there's going to be some bitterness unless there's been the work of God in people to like realize there is trauma, but there are people that have been changed and transformed by God, whose heart really is for the Navajo people. And that does take time to build the trust back again.
Amen. So let's take this last, go ahead, Emily.
I was just going to say, one of the other ways that we sort of step into some of that tension is doing our very best to learn the Navajo language. Most Navajos that we engage with we can get away with not learning the Navajo language, but it's a way that we can honor their culture and respect and love and show an interest in their culture that really means a lot to them. And I think when they see us doing that, they see, oh, they really actually care about us. Like, our culture means something to them. So that's something that we
That's
try.
some great insight. That's really neat. So let's close out with this. You guys, you guys have been called to go and to be a part of God's Great Commission by entering into that culture. There are people who are listening to this right now who've equally been called to pray and to support you guys. So if I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I get excited about what you're doing, tell me, how do I contact you? How do I get more information? How do I learn? How do I get on your prayer distribution list? How do I send you guys a check?
So there's two pretty easy ways to do that. If you go to mtw.org, there's a pretty easy way to search for missionaries on the website. So you can look us up, DH and Emily Henry, on the MTW's website, and there's some brief information about what we're doing, as well as easy ways to give and partner with us.
You could sign up for the newsletter there on that page. You could send us a message on that page as well. You can visit our website, which is hope4thenation. .wordpress.com. But there's also a link to that as well. Right.
All right, give us that URL one more time.
So it's hope4thenation.wordpress.com. That's
awesome.
Our blog. And if you go to mtw.org, you can look us up on the Find the Missionary page.
DH Emily Henry.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure to meet you guys, get to know you better, and get to meet DB. And we're praying that the Lord really uses you guys in the Navajo Nation. So thanks for joining us, and everybody else, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us for the Weekly Missions Roundtable.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.